When we made our video on northern Italy and the famous Contessa Matilda of Tuscany, we realised what an interesting backstory the medieval merchant republics in the region actually had. So after a bit of research and some comments suggesting we should cover them next, we decided to make a video on medieval republics and their portrayal in Crusader Kings 3. In the game, there are only 3 independent realms that act as republics: Venice and Pisa in northern Italy, and Cordoba in Muslim Iberia. Another 4 are republican vassals of feudal overlords, the cities of Urbino, Ancona and Lombardia, and the Scandinavian island of Gotland. So republics in CK3 really are a rare occurrence, which is in essence reflected in medieval reality. Republics are currently unplayable, but we can expect that this will be updated in the future, giving us another excuse to give Paradox all our money. In the meantime, there is a fantastic mod known as Res Publica, which we will talk more about later. So in this video, we will cover republics and republicanism in Paradox's Crusader Kings in relation to how these concepts actually existed in high medieval Europe. We will first talk about medieval republics in general, and then explore the ones Paradox portrayed in the game, along with some they might have missed. If you like our content, we'd be super thankful for any kind of support. Like, subscribe, share, and if you really want to support us, we now have a Patreon page. Link in description. According to the Oxford English Dictionary, a republic is a state in which power rests with the people or their representatives, specifically a state without a monarchy. Whereas a monarchy is defined as a political system based upon the undivided sovereignty or rule of a single person. While in modernity, republicanism became somewhat associated with democracy, it is important not to confuse the terms. Even today, there are monarchies that are significantly more democratic than many states that are republics in name. But the most significant aspect of a republic in the Middle Ages was that they functioned outside of the feudal tradition, mostly with some oligarchic system in which rich and important families of their city or region decided together what the state should do. After the republican tradition of antiquity had largely come to an end by the early Middle Ages, new republics appeared in the High and Late Middle Ages when a number of small states embraced republican systems of government. These were generally small but wealthy trading states, like the Mediterranean maritime republics beginning in the 11th century and the broadly Baltic-based Hanseatic League in the late 12th century, both of which the merchant class had risen to prominence. In Crusader Kings 3, republics are described as being ruled by the privileged citizens of the burgher class, among whom one is chosen as the leader. While that leader has significant influence, they depend on popularity to be re-elected. Unlike Crusader Kings 2, you cannot actually play as republics in CK3, as the game heavily depends on dynastic succession as a game mechanic. But it is possible to hold republics as your vassal, which gives you a decent 20% taxes and 10% levies. And if you want total control, you can also just invade the respective county, and thus end the city's republican government. As the famed 19th century British constitutional theorist Erskine aptly described it, the medieval Italian merchant republics greatly differed from the ancient Greek republics, mostly due to the conditions they were founded in. The entire soil of Greece was occupied by its little states. They had no kings or princes as neighbours. They owed allegiance to no other powers. But the republics of Italy were founded within the domains of existing monarchies. They were surrounded by the territories of larger states and of powerful feudal chiefs, dukes, marquesses, and counts. So despite the significant number of Italian merchant republics, they had it a lot harder than the ancient Greek city-state republics we might be tempted to compare them to, because despots like the feudal lords one plays as in Crusader Kings would constantly bully these poor fledgling nations. Still, many of them held out for a very long time and accumulated incredible wealth and power, some of which we want to talk about here. The most prominent of all the Italian merchant republics portrayed in the game is probably the most serene Republic of Venice. It represents one of the smallest kingdom tier realms in the game, only ruling over the two counties of Venezia and Veneto, and only containing a single duchy of the same name. It is ruled in the game by Serene Doge Domenico II of Venice of the Contarini dynasty. Whilst his name and dynasty is historically accurate, it's a little odd Paradox labelled him as the second, when historically he is usually referred to as Domenico I. Anyway, Domenico was elected by the Serenissima Signoria, the supreme body of government of the Republic of Venice in 1043, and ruled steadily all the way until his death in 1071. Under his reign, Venice entered into an era of peace and prosperity. Domenico maintained friendly relations with the Byzantine emperors, the Pope in Rome, and the Holy Roman Emperor. He was a liberal builder of churches and monasteries, such as San Nicolo de Lido, where he was also buried. Venice became the wealthiest state in the Mediterranean, and therefore one of the most politically influential. One of the most famous examples of its impact on medieval history was during the Fourth Crusade. In 1202, the Supreme Doge Enrico Dandalo agreed to loan ships, supplies and soldiers to the French Crusaders. But when the French failed to pay up, Dandalo took matters into his own hands, using the crusading army for his own personal gain. In exchange for cancelling the Crusaders' debt, he ordered the army to ignore Jerusalem and instead siege the city of Zara, a city of financial interest to Venice. This was the first time a Catholic crusading army attacked a Catholic city, and led to the Pope temporarily excommunicating the Venetian members of the Crusader army. Funnily enough, Enrico Dandalo kept this secret from the soldiers themselves, in order to keep them loyal. If this wasn't bad enough, a Byzantine prince by the name of Alexius Angelus arrived in the city shortly after and asked for help deposing his uncle, the Byzantine Emperor Alexius III, in exchange for financial support and supplies for the crusade. Dandalo, always looking to make an extra buck, agreed. The crusade was once again diverted, and Constantinople was sieged and sacked in 1204. The whole of the Eastern Roman Empire collapsed, and wasn't restored until 60 years later. Many historians have pointed out that the sacking of Constantinople significantly worsened the Great Schism between the Roman Catholic West and the Orthodox East, as well as setting the stage for the Ottoman conquests in the centuries to come. Cheeky Dandalo. The Republic of Venice survived as an independent realm all the way until 1797, and in the 1780s still controlled significant parts of the Adriatic coast. It was finally split between the Austrians and the French in the Napoleonic Wars, and later joined the unified Italy in the 19th century. Aside from Venice, the other independent Italian merchant republic in the game is Pisa. Pisa is also shown as a monarch-tier realm with the same title as Venice, the most serene Republic of Pisa, also ruled by a serene doge. It is debatable how accurate it is to place Venice and Pisa on the same tier, however. While Pisa was an economic powerhouse and commercial centre whose merchants dominated Mediterranean and Italian trade for some time, they did not match the power and influence of the Venetians, and their leaders were not recognised by the Holy Roman Emperors and the Byzantine Emperors as most serene doge, in contrast to the leaders of Venice. The Della Gherardesca family the in-game ruler of Pisa is from actually was an ancient noble family from Pisa, but it was difficult to find reliable sources on Tedice of Pisa himself. While Pisa was soon replaced by Genoa as the dominant merchant republic in western Italy, they did make it onto the modern flag of the Italian navy, together with the coat of arms of Almafi, and the most enduring merchant republics of Venice and Genoa. Another interesting republic is Ancona, which, in contrast to Venice and Pisa, is not an independent realm in Crusader Kings, but a vassal to the Holy Roman Emperor. It is ruled by Podesta Giacinto of Ancona, whose dynasty is not specifically given in-game. We could not find any historical information about him, but the title Podesta seems weird. This is first of all because the first document use of this title is from almost 100 years later than the 1066 start of the game. In addition, Ancona was an oligarchic republic ruled by 6 elders elected by the 3 neighbourhoods into which the city was divided. But it is true that Ancona was part of the Holy Roman Empire in the 11th century, struggling for full independence. We were surprised not to see Genoa among the great Italian merchant republics in the game, as the Genoese Maritime Republic famously rivaled the naval power of Venice, with contemporaries even referring to Genoa as la dominante di mari, meaning the dominant of the seas, and Genoa also had a doge, just like Venice. But in fact, by 1066, the Bishop of Genoa was still nominally ruling the city within the Holy Roman Empire, which is both portrayed like that in the game. But the groundwork for the later Republic had already been laid in the 11th century, as aside from the bishop's nominal authority, actual power was held by a number of consuls, annually elected by a popular assembly. It was a similar story with the republics of Florence and Siena, which were also constitutionally becoming republics in the course of the 12th century. Siena was just like Genoa, ruled by bishops prior to its republican era, while Florence was part of the Marquisate of Tuscany, being ruled over by our old friend Matilda prior to becoming a republic in 1115. It is unfortunate that the Republic of Almafi did not make it into the game, but while Almafi was a powerful maritime republic in the 11th century and was still independent in 1066 before being swallowed up by the Normans in 1073, at the start of the game it was territorially smaller than even the smallest in-game counties on the Apennine, so that probably explains its omission. Outside of Italy, reliable sources on what we would call republics are more difficult to find. An interesting example is Gotland, a Swedish island in the Baltic Sea. In the game, it is portrayed as the duchy rank realm of the Republic of Visby, vassal to the Kingdom of Sweden. Gotland clearly differed in its social system from mainland Scandinavia, as archaeological evidence seemed to suggest a complete lack of land-owning aristocracy on the island. It was ruled by the Gutnalting, a central council situated in the centre of the island, and by 20 smaller assemblies distributed over the whole island. According to Anders Andren, an archaeologist at the University of Stockholm, several researchers have proposed that Gotland was a peasant republic, but this idea is certainly too romantic. There existed clear social differences on the island, with families of seniors or judges that ruled the assemblies for generations. However, the social hierarchies were not as pronounced as mainland Scandinavia. This lines up reasonably well with the republicanism of the medieval Italian merchant republics. Gotland later became one of the most important trading posts of the Hanseatic League in the Baltic Sea. Another interesting republic you can find in CK3 is Cordoba, or as it is written according to the game's culture rules in Arabic, Kurtuba. I'm so sorry about that pronunciation. It is ruled in-game by Wali Amir al-Munsur of Cordoba, who we could not identify as Cordoba's real ruler in 1066. Instead, the republic should be ruled by a bloke called Abd al-Malik. However, that Abd al-Malik had a brother called Abd al-Rahman, just like al-Mansur, the 1066 ruler of Cordoba in Crusader Kings 3, so maybe there is just some naming style we don't understand. Anyway, Abd al-Malik inherited Cordoba from his father, just as his father had inherited it from his father before him. So it is kind of difficult to see why Cordoba should have been a republic at that point. There is some academic literature about how the city's senate proclaimed the republic in 1031 and made Abd al-Malik's grandfather ruler of Cordoba, but a single ruler inheriting his lordship through 2 generations does not really sound republican. But maybe we can ask a certain ruler from a questionable democratic people's republic today about that. The most disappointing omission of a republic in Crusader Kings is perhaps Iceland. The Icelandic Commonwealth, or the Icelandic Free State, existed on the island from the establishment of the Althing in 930 to the Norwegian takeover in 1262. The Althing was an ancient council and is the actual namesake of Iceland's parliament today. Under the unique political system of High Medieval Iceland, chieftains established a common legal code and settled judicial disputes at the Althing as a national assembly. Considering this highly cooperative form of government, it is no surprise that many historians consider medieval Iceland as an early form of a republic. And Iceland does feature as a republic in the Res Publica mod we mentioned earlier, which makes republics playable in the game with a system of important families making policy decisions. The mod gives a great new dynamic and also works well with other mods. It is available in the Steam Workshop, and I highly recommend you check it out, link in description of this video. The final medieval republic we want to talk about is a very interesting story we had never heard about before the research of this video. It is a great example of how European historians, history nerds, and game producers can be a bit Eurocentric in their understanding and interpretations of history. The Qarmatians, a sheer movement of Islam centered in Eastern Arabia that has been dubbed utopian socialist, or even communist, by historians and public thinkers like Slavoj Žižek, developed an egalitarian society ruled by a council of 6. They minted their own money and ruled over large parts of the eastern coast of the Arabian Peninsula in the 10th century after rebelling against the Fatimid Caliphate. By the mid-11th century, their power was in sharp decline, and by the 1060s and 1070s, they were only holding on to their last remaining stronghold at the Hofuf Oasis, which is today, and in the game, known as al-hassa. There is probably enough literature citing historical evidence for this Qarmatian republic to play a role in the game, especially since it is such an overlooked and fascinating story. But considering the largely sensationalistic coverage this historical phenomenon has received, we also cannot really blame Paradox for taking a more cautious approach with the Arabian Peninsula, seeing as the Qarmatians were almost wiped out by the 1066 start. Thank you for watching this video and following our channel. If you can think of any other high medieval republics that Paradox and us have missed, please let us know in the comments. And please consider supporting us on Patreon in order for us to reduce our real life responsibilities and to be able to make even more content for history in bits.